Shenmue III. Now this is a game that I've been waiting for since the ending of Shenmue II left me hanging over 18 years ago. I proudly supported the Kickstarter, and I'm in the middle of playing a game that's made me love sitting in front of my TV and enjoying what it's like to actually feel like a kid again playing video games. This is a feeling that I appreciate and honestly value every time I play a game that I truly enjoy. Not many games can do that for me, so when I actually get the opportunity to look forward to a game, and when I get it, I actually enjoy it to the point I can't put it down. I cherish the time spent with that type of game. That game for me is Shenmue III. This video is not a review of Shenmue III, but it's an analysis of the actual reviews for the game. I haven't finished Shenmue III yet, but don't worry, when I do, I'll have a review of my own to add to the vast list of reviews for this game. So why am I analyzing the reviews? Well, basically, after my last video on this channel was published, which you should definitely go check out, I realized that Shenmue reviews were all over the place. When you're a person who depends on gaming reviews from your favorite website before making the decision of purchasing a game, you are trusting that decision to one person's very subjective opinion. And since opinions on Shenmue 3 are kind of all over the place, I wanted to take a look at what the reviewers are really saying as a whole, so you can have a trusted opinion from all of them. Sure, you can get the Metacritic score, but that number doesn't tell you what you need to know. It's just giving you an average without context. Is a 3.5 out of 5 really equivalent to another channel's score of 70 on an art that is totally subjective? Reviews themselves also tend to do one thing. They are quick articles to get your attention and clicks in order to drive traffic and generate revenue. You're more likely to click on a Shenmue review with either a perfect score or an abysmal one than, say, an average okay score. Other times, reviews may even completely change over time, after the reviewers themselves, and especially fans, give the game time to do what I call breathe. What I mean by this is simply letting a game be out long enough to give players a chance to fully immerse themselves in the game, then play it 2, 3, 5, or 10 times over, and really think about the game before coming to terms on what their opinion really is. Once reviewers have time to do this themselves and see what the public has to say about the game over time, they might actually readdress and rewrite the review and change their opinion. Let's address this fact by going way back to around the time the first Shenmue game was still relevant, all the way back to the year 2000, to a game that is largely based to be considered one of the gems of the original Dreamcast. That game was Crazy Taxi. Now this game was a great arcade game released in the late 90s for the Naomi arcade board. This game was simple. Pick people up, drive them to their destination within the time limit, earn money, move on until the time ran out. But the game is so much deeper than that. This game was just fun, and I spent a lot of money playing this game in arcades back then. Anyway, I heard that the game would be ported to the Dreamcast, since it was easy to port games designed for Naomi. Finally, when the game was released, before I purchased it, I went to one of the websites I would always get my reviews from, videogames.com. Back in the early days of the internet, search engines existed, but they weren't something I'd use often. If I wanted movies, I'd go to movies.com. If I needed to look up some random fact, I'd go to encyclopedia.com. If I wanted a video game review, I'd go to videogames.com. But when I did that, something would happen. It would automatically redirect me to GameSpot.com. That's how I discovered their website. Now, if you type the same thing today, you'd get GiantBomb.com, but I distinctly remember that the URL was used by GameSpot back then. Anyway, back to my point. I can remember jumping on GameSpot.com to read the review and what the game would feature and wondering how good it was. When I logged on, GameSpot had basically trashed the game. Their main gripe was the fact that there was no depth to the game. It only had 2 playable levels, the new level was uninteresting, and the training games were short, frustrating distraction to the game. Basically, they didn't like it and they were disappointed. Then the game had time to breathe. Now, years later, we can all proudly say that the Dreamcast port was one of the best ports of Crazy Taxi ever released. The game played like a dream, and its crazy replay value keeps fans coming back for more to this day. If you want to revisit that original Crazy Taxi review posted by that website, I don't think you can find it. I honestly couldn't find it. If you search their site for the Dreamcast review, you'll find a Crazy Taxi review that praises the game. But the review itself was done in 2004, over 3 years after the game was released on the Dreamcast and well after the system's demise. Why re-review a game that was out for years on a dead system? Simple. For no other reason than to fix the review and update it from a quick review to a review on a game that has had time to breathe. So now back to Shenmue 3. The reviews are out, and like I mentioned previously, they're all over the place. So let's actually take a look at the reviews and see what the reviewers were collectively saying. Now before I start, let me get the following out of the way about my research. I base this research on data from Metacritic.com's listed reviews. I sampled 9 reviews from PS4 reviewers at random, and 9 from the PC reviews. At the time of doing my research, there were only 10 reviews on PC, so I basically had almost all of them. With the reviews, I chose them randomly, with one caveat. I chose 3 high-rated reviews, 3 mid-tier, and 3 of the lowest reviews for each system. From there, I asked myself, what do I want to find out from the game's reviews? Here's what I came up with. Number 1. Does the fact that the reviewer played the first 2 games affect his or her overall final opinion of the game? Number 2. What were the most liked and disliked qualities of the game that most reviewers could agree on? And finally, number 3. If a reviewer were to recommend a game, what are the best prerequisites a person should have in order to enjoy the game? So with that said, let me get this out of the way. These results, much like the reviews, are very subjective. I generalized some of these answers in my columns, and some small assumptions had to be made. For example, one of my columns had, were they an original fan? None of the reviews answered that, so I had to read into the articles and make an assumption as to whether they waited that long or not. Same goes on whether they liked the original Shenmue games or not. I also had a column that is listed as most positive quote and most negative quote. I generalized the responses and split them into categories. In most of these reviews, they had mentioned several of these categories, but I picked quotes based on whether the quote was really emphasized in the review, was listed on their listed categories in the bottom summaries, or they wrote the best thing or the worst thing before talking about whatever that feature was. And finally, on all 18 reviews, the average rating was about 70, which is equivalent to the current Metascore on the PS4 and PC editions as I write this, so I believe I have a pretty balanced sample. With that said, everything about these scores, reviews, ratings, and even data gathering is subjective. If you don't agree with my data presented, it's fine. Leave your comments below and let me know what you think. Anyway, on to the data and what I gathered. One of the interesting and first data bits I captured from Metacritics were the following facts. At the time I did my research, Shenmue III was the 11th most discussed PS4 game of 2019 and the 22nd most discussed PC game of 2019. That tells me one thing. Shenmue fans are vocal about the franchise. On to the next fact. When viewing all the reviews, I determined that at least 44% of all reviewers in my data actually liked the original games. Now, this does not mean that most of the reviewers didn't like the first Shenmue games. It was just unclear from the article if they did. I also would check the websites of these reviewers, and this means that in the review, I was able to detect some fondness towards the first two games. Now on to the next fact. When taking all reviews into consideration, 56% of the reviewers ended their review on a positive light for Shenmue III, regardless of the final score given. This means that the reviewer gave an impression that despite the review, they would definitely want to see the series continue and left the reader feeling like the game at the very least has some potential. Now, to add to the previous fact, here's an enlightening one. Of the reviewers who seemed to like the first two games, 100% of them enjoyed Shenmue III enough to end the review on a positive note. So basically, once you're a fan of the franchise after playing the first two, you're more than likely able to enjoy the third one. Now, what about PC versus PS4? It's a fact that the PC version does seem to have more options available for graphics and controls, so that should automatically make the PC version one favored, right? Well, not really. 44% of the PC reviews ended on a positive note, when compared to 67% of PS4 reviews ending on a positive note. Now, there are several theories as to why that is, but from the reviews I read, it seemed that PC reviewers did not seem to understand or even know about the franchise as well as the PS4 reviewers. Now, when it comes to this next breakout, like previously mentioned, I took what the reviewers deemed as the best qualities of Shenmue III and categorized them, and the results are as follows. So if you look at the pie chart, stay with me now, it seemed that the most loved quality of Shenmue III is the mundane. Basically, what this category means is that the moments that stand out are the moments that have you take parts in the side activities like gambling or other distractions, or enjoying the world for what it is in all its glory. It's truly an experience that you can lose yourself in if you take the time to live in the world that Yu Suzuki built. Now let's flip it around. What did critics mostly dislike about the game? Well, it's a bit mixed, but mostly the incredibly slow pace of the game. But wait, isn't that the same thing as what they liked the most? Well, this one's a bit different. Most didn't like the fact that the game had elements that would drag the story and make it much longer than it needed to be, or that there were some dialogue sessions that couldn't be skipped, or battles that the player would win, but the story would be written so you lose anyway, and would have to go on a long training mission just to fight the same character again to win. So after reading all of those articles and analyzing those numbers, let's answer my original question. First, does the fact that the reviewer played the first two games affect his or her overall opinion of the game? I would say yes. The numbers showed that those that at least played the original games were more positive on this third game. Number 2, what were the most liked and disliked qualities of the game that most reviewers could agree on? Well, we just went over that, but one last time. The mundane is the best feature, and the slow pace was the worst feature. And finally, number 3, if a reviewer were to recommend a game, what are the best prerequisites a person should have in order to enjoy this game? The numbers again, and I think common sense showed it. Regardless if you're new to the franchise or if you played the originals on the Dreamcast, you absolutely need to have experienced and enjoyed the first two games in order to have a higher opinion of the third. And that's what the data is confirming. So are you curious about Shenmue 3? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed it, which will help inspire me to make more content in the future. And as always, you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. I'm at less than 600 subs as of this video, so I really mean it when I say that each sub makes my day. It's been a good year. See you guys later.